Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Heather Burnikoff, and I'm just a regular volunteer for the Integrated Regional Water Management Outreach Committee. And part of our mission is to actually help educate and inform folks about water issues in Mariposa County. So clearly you're interested in those things, so you're here this morning very early. And we're competing with shopping, we know that. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to have two speakers today. And our first speaker is going to be from the Public Health Department in the Environmental Health Division specifically. And secondly, we'll have Regina Hirsch from the Watershed Progressive, Sierra Watershed Progressive. The concept is that a lot of folks have their wells, but yet many people don't know how the well's constructed and how, it's like cash flow out of your bank, right? That you have to manage cash flow. Same with water. You have to manage water flow from a well. And especially in the drought, we have issues around recharge and what have you. Welcome. Thank you for coming. And so I wanted to let you know that we also have some giveaways that were generously donated by Ace Hardware and some other anonymous donors from the committee. So after the presentation, very important, we always want to make sure that we're meeting your needs and we have information that's relevant to you. So you received an evaluation form when you signed in. Please, we really want to know your opinion and we very much want that information back. Did anybody not get one? If you raise your hand, we can need you one. Okay, so everybody received an evaluation form. Okay, wonderful. So last thing I want to tell you is that we're trying to create several informational programs so that if there's something that piques your interest, we're going to try and give people some additional information on that. So for example, rainwater harvesting was last Saturday. We're going to have gray water harvesting on November 7th at 10 a.m. at the Government Center. So if anybody is interested in gray water, we'll have a workshop on November 7th. Okay? We'll have questions and answers after each presentation, so please hold your questions until then. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce somebody who's a really amazing person in our community. Probably going to embarrass him, but Dave Conway is just, he's really brilliant and he's very helpful for our community. We're so grateful to have him. Very knowledgeable about all kinds of information about water quality, contamination issues, etc. So thank you, Dave, for being here today.
Thank you, Heather. So as Heather said, I'm the Director of the Environmental Health Division at the Public Health Department. Our office is responsible for permitting new wells, and we do a lot of troubleshooting for people when they're having violations on their wells. So what I was going to talk about today is we'll talk about aquifers, where the aquifers are in Mariposa. Different types of wells, the valley aquifer type drilling wells versus mountain hard rock drilling, fracture systems versus open aquifers. Well construction for hard rock wells. That's the type of wells we have in Mariposa, are hard rock wells. Static level with the drought is really important information for you to know about your well. We'll talk about that. Water quality issues and how to identify and address them, contaminants and their fate in the environment, controlling the spread of those contaminants, some water quality concerns, how to read a lab report. We get a lot of questions, people have their water tested, but then they get this report back and they have no idea what the information means. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Well logs. How many of you have gotten a copy of your well log? Okay. We have copies of well logs. We don't have every well log that's been produced because, quite frankly, some of the wells are older than the rules that require them to be submitted to our office.
What is a well log?
It's, and we'll go over that. We'll go over that. So aquifers. An aquifer is simply a layer of permeable rocks down the ground which groundwater flows through, and it contains enough water to supply wells and springs. You see a lot of stuff on the news about the aquifers down in the Central Valley. It's like an underground lake, and the aquifers that we have up here are different. The two types are the alluvial basins, that's what we have down in the Central Valley. And then we have the fracture type aquifers, which we have up here where water is actually found in fractures in the rock, down in bedrock. One way to think of it is, and I have a slide that will demonstrate this later, but in the valley aquifers, if you had a bathtub that's full of sand and you put water in it until the water was just below the surface of the sand, anywhere you poked a straw down in that bathtub, you're going to find water at the same level. That's pretty much what you find down in the valley. When the aquifer starts receding, that water level on neighboring wells drops down at about the same rate. Up here, the similar analogy would be if you took that same bathtub and you filled it with bricks, and pushed the bricks tightly together, you're only going to find water in the cracks between the bricks. And that's the situation we have in our fractured rock drilling up here. So this is really hard to see, but because of the background here, but this area here is the Central Valley's aquifer. All of this is aquifer. There's several on the coast and up and down. Mariposa County is located about right here, and the only aquifer that we have is right here, is up here in Yosemite Valley. Everything else is fractured rock. Yeah, similar right there. So, as I said, with fractured rock aquifers, the water is trapped in the fracture in the rock. Different types of rock have different fracture patterns. For instance, granite has really wide fractures. When it moves, it breaks real clean breaks, and as the earth moves and those fractures open up, you get large fractures. Greenstone is another type of rock, and serpentine type rocks have a real tight, packed fracture system, and so they don't allow for a lot of water to flow in those fractures. The other thing is the fractures are not real consistent throughout the rock. It's unlike the valley aquifer type systems. You don't have a fracture that goes all the way through the rock for miles, and every well that hits into that fracture finds water at the same depth and in the same amount. That's not what happens up here. So consequently, a good example is my next door. I have a property in Lush Meadows, and my well is over 600 feet deep, has a half a gallon a minute production. My next door neighbor, who's 200 yards away, his well is only 150 feet deep, and he has 25 gallons. So it's hard to determine water quantity in the mountains. This is just a picture of what I described earlier with the valley aquifer versus the fractured rock. Okay. So in a fractured rock well, you've got the well pours down, and you're dependent upon the fractures in the rock, which are kind of lined by these blue lines. And go to the next slide. And this kind of shows you the variation. This one's intercepting a lot of different fractures that have water in them, so the water level's up here real high. And this one's only hitting a couple of fractures down here, so the water level's only right there where the highest fracture that it's hitting. Well construction on the normal type well that we see is, you've got, first of all, you're going to have a borehole that goes all the way down into the rock that's about 10 inches in diameter. Once they get down into the rock and they're confident that they're in solid rock, they'll place a casing that's a 6-inch diameter casing down in and all the way down into the rock. Then what they do is take a sealing material, sometimes it's concrete, sometimes it's bentonite clay, and they'll fill this space right in between. This is a really important feature, and prior to about 1990. This was not a requirement in Mariposa County. So some of the older wells don't have this annular space seal. And what that sealing does is that the sealing material is pushed out into the formation, outside into the dirt, and it is up against the casing. And it creates a seal that prevents water that would otherwise run along the side of the casing and just run right down into the hole from the surface or near surface, from contaminating the well. And then, go back. Once that they get to the bottom of the casing is set into solid rock, and then it's open hole below that. There's no casing below that point. It's just a borehole that goes, that's the same diameter as the casing, 6 inches, and it goes all the way down to the remainder depth of the well. You've got no water coming in this area up here, but once you get down below here, you can, any fracture that gets seen gets picked up by the well. What this slide is depicting is static level. Kind of give you a picture of what the static level is. And so if the recharge area for your well is coming down here, and the water level and the fractures is along here, if you drill your well up here, you're going to just have the water level, right in here. It's going to seek the same level as what the recharge area is. When you come over here and you've got a more impermeable layer such as the rock and the fracture, consider this a fracture in the rock rather than an alluvial type. The water level is going to come up in the well, even though this is a deeper well down here, is going to come up to the same level as the water here. You come a little farther along and you drill the well over here, and you've got a recharge area up here. The water's considered to be under pressure. It'll push right out, and you'll have what's termed an artesian well. The water will just flow out the top. Marshall, sorry. Go ahead. Wells we typically think of wells as a conduit that we're drilling down into the ground, and we're bringing water out, we're bringing clean water out. And one of the reasons that we're so careful in the construction, and I went through a lot of discussion about the construction of the well, and we oversee that construction, is that they're also a conduit for contamination to go down into the groundwater. So if we don't, put that annular seal in there, right, you can have water that will flow beside and run down in it. If you don't properly seal your well, properly destroy an abandoned well or an old well that is no longer producing, that can be a source of contamination. And we've had cases where old wells were just kind of cut off and pour over top of it and forget about it. And then years later, there's a corral placed over top of it, or actually the worst one that I saw was a hog farm that then it started contaminating the neighbor's well because the water contamination. Also in areas where there's no contamination at a certain level. We've had some areas where we've had nitrate contamination, and we know there's some nitrate contamination in the upper water area, even though it's in fractures in the rock. We'll seal below that known area to the lower. If you're not careful enough, you can take this contaminated water that's in the upper area and end up mixing it with the lower, less uncontaminated water, and can spread the contamination. Well logs. You asked what a well log was. This is a well log. This is a picture of the well log. Basically what it is a report from the driller of what they did, what the well that they constructed on your property, what its properties are. And this section right here tells how did they drilled and what the material was that they went through. So in this case, the first 52 feet was just dirt. And then between 52 feet and I think it's 150 feet, it was solid granite. They didn't identify any fractures. They went through a quartz layer here that had, and then they also describe on the side over here how much water they have. 25 gallons per minute in the first one, another 20 at this next fracture, for a total of 45 gallons a minute. Well logs will also give you information on how deep the casing is, and in some, usually they also have how far it was below the surface and what the static level was at the time that it was drilled. Static level on a good well, in this case the first water was hit at 150 feet. Here they have the static level of 32 feet. That's a good well. That water under there is under pressure and pushes up in the casing. So, and knowing what your static level is and reviewing your static level is a good idea on a regular basis, especially with the drought. This level, a well that was drilled in the 1980s that has gone through a couple of droughts now, and you test like this and you test the well and the static level is still 32 feet is you know, a good well. It's under it's a good producing well.
How far back do they go? Do they go into the 70s with well logs?
Some. There was not a requirement for well logs to be submitted to our office prior to about 1979. Some of
my house was built. Well,
some of the well drillers provided them. You know, and if you call our office and ask, tell me you want a copy for a well log, if we have one, we can look it up by APN. We'll take your address and your assessor's parcel number. And look it up. And I think I'm on the side over here. On the side over here.
all right, thank you.
Does it have sealing, if it's sealed or not?
It does. It'll say the casing is here, and there's sealing information on what we're
So it should be there.
It'll be listed on the well log. Some of the older ones will say that they were sealed, that they sealed with cement. Some of the old well drilling technique was to take a bag of Portland cement, mix it with a little bit of the cuttings that came out of the well, and then and then to wash that down the side, hoping that it's going to go down at the casing, where the casing meets the lock, and seal it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And have that, put the material.
No, they'll say that they use cement in that case. But after 1990, any well drilled after 1990 has a seal that was poured into place.
Isn't changing conditions, is it possible to know what the static level is at any point in time?
In a little bit, I'll show you some devices that we use to measure that. So, water quality. I get questions all the time. Should I test my well? What do you think? What do you think my answer is? Should you test your well? You should test your well if you want to know what's in it. It's not a bad idea. In public water systems, they're tested anywhere from daily to monthly. And then the next obvious question is, what should I test my well for, and how often? And then I get the question, as I said before, I've got this water test in my hands and I don't know what it says, so can you help me? And we can certainly help you with that. This is a list of, and it's on the handouts that I gave out, or they're on the side of the room here, on what we recommend that you should test your well for. This is the list of constituents that includes some metals and items that are both chronic and acute toxins that you should be looking for. A lot of times what you'll get is just, a lot of people will only test this one. This is very important to test for. It's bacteria, if you have any bacteria in or not. This list comes from the state water, drinking water branch. This is what they require public water systems to test for and on a regular basis. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see this, but this is an example of a report, a lab report of all of these items. And what you'll have is the item that they tested for is on the side here, what the results that they tested for were, what their reporting limit is. The reporting limit is how close, what can they measure down to. And then there's some quality control information over here. Next slide. And this is a little bit kind of more close-up of that. And one of the things that you want to look really close at, especially when you're comparing the requirements here, or the results I should say, is what units are they being reported in? If you, I'm not sure if you're explaining. Yeah, no, go back. Go back 2 slides. One more. So here, this is the maximum contaminant level that's allowed in the water for public water drinking purposes. You'll notice that all of these are in milligrams per liter. That's basically parts per million. Go back forward. Again. And you'll see in this case these are all in milligrams per liter also, but sometimes you'll have them in micrograms per liter, and that one and that's parts per billion. So you want to make sure that you're comparing the right results to the contaminant level. Contaminants and their fate in the environment. There are biological contaminants that's the bacteria that get down into the wells. The most common one that we test for is coliform bacteria. Not because coliform bacteria in itself is dangerous. There's only a couple of types of coliform bacteria that cause disease. The E. coli, everybody's heard of E. coli in meat products and stuff. When that's in the well, that can be a problem. But coliform bacteria are not typically present in groundwater. So when you do find them, they're an indicator that you've got some kind of a source of pollution that's getting into your well that needs to be checked. It could be something as simple as an animal, a mouse, got into your storage tank, and you get coliform bacteria off of that. It could be as bad as your septic system is leaking into your tank. Nitrates are an issue. You see more and more nitrate problems in the valleys. Tulare County has a huge nitrate problem. I've seen some high nitrate areas in Mariposa County around some of the areas. Come on in. Some of the areas that are historic turkey ranching, for instance. Turkey and chicken ranching have a lot of nitrate problems when it gets down into the groundwater. Because we're in gold country, arsenic can be a problem. Then in iron problems we see a lot of.
And these are all typical contaminants that we have in Mariposa County that you see more often than some of the other ones.
Right, yeah, I didn't even go into the list of all the exotic pesticide chemicals and things that are used down in the valley. We just don't see them, and I typically don't recommend that people test for those. They're expensive to test for, and I've never seen a test result yet that had those pesticides show up in a well in Mariposa County. So the bacteria are present in the environment. They naturally die off over time. They're not a problem if they don't get into your water, food supply, the coliform bacteria are present on the surface in every surface in this room.
You didn't get to the hardness issue. I wonder if you'll address that later. I'd like to know more about water hardness.
Okay. Well, if you do get bacteria in your water, as I said, if your water result comes back that you have coliform present in the water, there are methods of decontaminating it that typically work. If you say one-time contamination issue, say the drought temporarily gets over this winter, we're all hoping for a lot of rain, and your well gets flooded over, and you get contamination that goes down into your well. Just chlorinating that well will help get rid of that one-time contamination issue. And backup samples that show that it's clean, typically are taken. And then also on one of the flyers that I have over there is the methods of sanitizing your water. Nitrates. Nitrates were the greatest fertilizers. We're using them, or those of you that had lawns in the past, maybe don't necessarily have lawns now, and gardens, used nitrogen-based, nitrate-based fertilizers. They dissolve in water real easily. They're easily carried down into groundwater. Once they're in the water, they're really hard to get rid of. They don't break down very easily in the environment. They need to be filtered out with some pretty complicated filters. And they do concentrate if you boil the water. So unlike bacteria, if you have bacteria in the water, and those of you that have been camping or hiking, you're told, yeah, you can just boil the water, drink out of the stream and boil the water. That takes care of the bacteria and any frozen type contaminants. But the nitrate is a chemical, so what it does is it just concentrates as the water evaporates off. You get a concentration of the nitrate. So if you have nitrate contaminated water, you don't want to boil it.
Do you want to filter it, or?
Yeah, there are some similar to water softening devices. It's the same process as water softening, but they have some medias that will take nitrates out. Arsenic. Arsenic's been used as a poison for years. It's an item that we know to cause cancer. Some forms dissolve in water and are carried to groundwater flow, through the groundwater flow. If you have a well near an old mine, one of the reasons we see arsenic in our area is because we're a gold mining area. One of the ways that modern gold mining looks for gold is they first look for arsenic. There's what's called an arsenic halo around gold deposits. So it's not a surprise that we have arsenic in some of the water in and around Mariposa. And some of I've seen cases where on older homes that are right next to an old gold mine, and the gold mine flooded, and sometimes that happened. They're mining away and in an underground mine, and they hit a fracture that has water in it. The mine shaft fills up with water, and they got this great idea. Well, now we got a well. Just stick a pump down there and use that water. And arsenic is 400 times above the state standard in a well that the water coming out of the mine shaft. So
you're saying that this arsenic was there naturally near the gold. It's not that the miners use it in the process.
Correct. The miners use mercury to help get the gold out, and mercury contamination can be an issue right around mines. But the arsenic is naturally occurring. It's in the soil and in the ground. Most of the forms that are in the ground aren't dissolved dissolvable in the water, so it's not a huge problem, but it is something to look at, and it's on the list of things that we recommend that you test for, just to know.
And when water is exposed to the arsenic, that's when it gets in the groundwater, that's when it becomes a problem, right, in the mining process.
Well, it's
And it's dissolvable.
the dissolvable, yeah, the dissolvable type. Manganese, manganese has a kind of a bitter metallic taste, and it's a secondary standard. It's really not too much of a health problem. There are a few cases in children, high concentrations of manganese have been shown to cause some problems in infants and children, similar to nitrate, what nitrate does. It's usually associated with iron, so if you have a higher iron content in your well, you're likely to have a high manganese level also. Again, it's easily treated similar to taking iron out of the water. The process is similar to the water softening type process. Sulfur, we don't have 3 elemental sulfur that I know of anywhere in Mariposa, but we do have sulfates, iron sulfate in the water. After you have a well or experienced a well, you get a kind of a rotten egg smell out of your water. Yeah, that's iron sulfate, and iron bacteria are breaking down the iron sulfate in the water. They're actually eating the sulfate or the sulfide, and you get a hydrogen sulfide gas that gets produced off. There's no standard for it. It can leave a bad taste and certainly a bad smell. We've had good success sometimes in treating it by, if you have an intermittent problem, chlorinating to kill off the bacteria. And by the way, iron bacteria are not a disease-causing bacteria. There's a lot of, you can often find a lot of different bacteria in your water that are not pathogenic, and that's not a problem. And iron bacteria are one of those types of bacteria.
And Dave, we've used an aerating tank in order to just off gas before it comes in the house.
Yeah, that's a common way too. Thanks, Heather. That if you just spray the water into your storage tank so that it aerates, that'll help adding air to it.
What do you think about ozonator?
Ozone will.
Ozonator.
Yeah, an ozonator will take care of bacteria problems. It won't get rid of the rotten egg smell.
Right.
Usually that's being produced down in the well, underground.
I have an ozonator in my tank.
Up inside your tank, so that if any bacteria that are in the tank, that will.
Well, plus it keeps the tank circulating. The ozonator.
Okay.
It keeps the water circulating in the tank.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the ozonators as some people. We will often recommend that somebody just use chlorine, put a half a gallon of chlorine down the well, put a hose over to the well, turn the well on, and let it cycle, and so the water running back down into the well and up to get that chlorine all throughout the whole well, and then that'll usually kill the iron bacteria.
Would you explain that do not boil note on your slides, a couple slides down?
The water, with some of the constituents such as arsenic and nitrate, they tend to accumulate. The chemicals will accumulate in the water. Similar to like if you boil water with some salt in it, you'll eventually get salt crystals forming. That's what's occurring. The concentration goes up, and rather than killing it off, and
does it go up in the air?
No, the water vapor goes up into the air, but the concentration stays in there. So if you just boil the water, you boil some of the water off. Say you had nitrates at 50 parts per million, and you boil that water for 10 minutes, and you boil half of the water away, you could have nitrates at 100 parts per million now in the
have to have bacteria to get your hydrogen smell?
Typically, that's the typical cause.
So you have to have a contaminated well.
Well, it's a type of bacteria that are living on the iron and the iron sulfate in the ground.
And that can be a problem up here without salmonella and contaminants?
No, that's a naturally occurring bacteria that's down in the well. It's not a pathogenic type bacteria. So yeah, salmonella would have to be introduced from the surface.
Okay.
So if you tested your water and you had coliform bacteria in there, as I said earlier, the total coliform, and you also showed E. coli in there, you would be concerned. My concern would be, yeah, you could have other viruses and or stuff like salmonella that are getting into your well. But in this case, this is not. This is a naturally occurring.
If you have iron in your water, you're going to have iron bacteria?
Not always.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
So you go by the smell.
Then you probably
That
have.
can be a problem up here.
Yes, it can be.
It's not like a health problem, though.
But it's not a health problem. Breathing the gas for a prolonged period of time in a concentrated area is not safe. But typically, what you get coming out of the house is not.
I had the rotten egg smell only with the hot water, and it turned out when the plumber came that there's some rod they put down, and I'm not good enough, in a heater, and he just could remove that rod, and he said it doesn't do anything for, I guess it does something in an urban area, but he removed the rod and there's no rotten egg smell. I like that.
Yeah. So what you can't really read on this slide is talking about controlling contaminants, and the number one way of controlling that we look at is proper well construction. Making sure that the well is properly constructed to prevent undesirable subsurface water from getting down to contamination. There's certainly well treatment options, and some of those are, as we've discussed earlier, like similar to water softeners, filters. You can buy filters and put on activated carbon filters. I think you've probably all seen the Brita filters that they recommend that you screw onto your kitchen faucet and it runs through an activated carbon type filter. There's reverse osmosis, which takes out a lot of items. Also, it'll work a little bit on nitrates and most of the items that we've talked about today. But it's a very energy-intense process. And it also is, and it doesn't produce a lot of water at the time. So usually these are limited to under the sink and just for the drinking portion of it.
So
and then,
when you say energy intense, do you mean it uses a lot of electricity?
Correct.
Okay.
And then the ion exchange type, which is similar to what's used for water softening. Does anybody here have a water softener where you put salt in? Okay. Yeah, so you're familiar with that. That's an ion exchange where you're exchanging one ion in the water for usually the sodium or potassium in the salt.
And Dave, I just a question, because not all solutions, filtration solutions will help get rid of things, like we have arsenic in our well, and so like you have to, who can people turn to if they can't, to figure out what filter is best for their particular contamination issue?
Yeah. Most of the well drilling companies, the pump companies have certifications to do water treatment. There's a couple of companies here that have water treatment operators licenses, and it's really a water treatment operator that you want to go to as a company that has those.
I wanted to say we also had arsenic in our water and had to do a lot of research to figure out how to filter it out. What we found is that there's only one company in California that's been certified by the state of California to provide whole house water filters to filter out arsenic. And it's unfortunately it's COVID. There's no competition at this point in time. We ended up going to the company that makes the filters in Georgia, and they sent us the same direction, but the state hasn't certified any other companies.
Yeah, there's a state certification process for those, and that's a very good point. If you're going to buy a filter or a filtering device, you want to make sure, especially in this day and age of the internet, you don't know where it's coming from. You want to make sure that the device that you're purchasing is certified for use in California and it's certified to take out the contaminant that you're looking for. That's a really good point.
We did have our water tested again just within the last month, and there was no arsenic detected.
So your filter
we went
devices.
from 8 parts per billion down to none detected. So the filter works.
So the filter's working, right?
Yeah.
So who do you get to test your water?
We have a list of laboratories so one of the sheets that I sent over here, and there's some companies around town that will come out. Some of the well-building companies will usually come out, take the samples, send them off to the lab for you. So, any more questions on wells and before we move on to our dry well program?
How often should you have your well tested? I understand their problem, but...
Right. Public water systems are tested at least every 3 months. That's probably a little excessive for the homeowner. We're recommending, if somebody asks me, we recommend at least once a year on the bacteria side, unless you have a known problem. If you have a known, and then the other stuff, a one-time test usually will. One time.
Does distilling remove arsenic?
If you, yes. As long as what you're drinking is the part that's coming out of the other end after the evaporation process.
Because it concentrates.
Because it concentrates it in on the other side.
Is it difficult to add a casing to a well if it doesn't have one?
Round drilled well?
Yeah. Can it be done after the well's already?
It can be, and there are cases where it's just a smaller, sometimes whenever there's a well that's getting, contamination that's coming in below the casing, they'll go back in and it's a 6-inch hole, so they'll go in and put a 4-inch casing in, down to the depth with what they call a boot on the bottom. It's a big rubber seal that you push down to the bottom, and then fill that center area between the borehole or the old casing and the new one with the...
Yeah, you mentioned 2 types of, one was clay of some sort, the other was cement.
Correct.
Which is preferable in water?
They both have good properties. If it's a real deep seal, the cement, when cement is hardening, it has what they call the heat of hydration that occurs, and it gets real hot. And it's heavy, so as it's kind of pushing down and it's heating that, and it's heating up as it's hardening, we've actually seen cases where it'll start to melt the plastic casing. Yeah, so bentonite clay is good. Bentonite swells about 7 times its size from a dry powder out whenever it's hydrated. So if you put it down as you first hydrate it, it starts swelling and pushing out into the area and forms a really good seal. The only problem with bentonite is it has to stay hydrated. So if it's a real arid environment, it'll dry out.
So you should try and flush it with the made to be able to flush moisture in it?
There's usually enough moisture in the ground in some areas, in most areas of Mariposa, in most years. drought years, and it will rehydrate. So.
Dave, is one of your handouts over there how the contaminants you suggest that folks test for? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a two-sided handout. One side is a list of the contaminants, the same list that was up here, and the other side is a list of laboratories that service the local area and or companies that provide testing. So moving on, the drought. Everybody realizes that we're now we're listed as extreme drought conditions in our area of California. There are very few areas in California that are left even in what they consider serious drought. We were in serious drought a few years ago. Now it's pretty much the entire state is in serious drought, and our area is extreme drought. So I didn't have a slide that shows all those areas. As a result of that, we're starting to see wells going dry in Mariposa County. And back in September of last year, a little over a year ago now, Governor Brown signed an executive order authorizing the use of emergency funding that's typically reserved for disasters such as fires and floods and earthquakes, to authorize that funding to be used to provide assistance to private home owners whose wells have gone dry. We heard about it. I heard about the declaration. I went to the Board of Supervisors in December of last year. The board authorized us to apply through our Office of Emergency Services to the program to allow funding to occur in Mariposa County. In February, we started looking at various ways of administering the program, and the program at the state level there were two ways it could be done. One way is that the county could do it. The county could start delivering water to people and paying for that water to be delivered to people. Could install tanks at the people's homes and pay for those tanks to be installed. And the state would reimburse us 75% of those costs. The other way is if we contracted with a private nonprofit organization, they could run the program and they get 100% reimbursement. When we ran the numbers on an assumed over a couple of year process that we have 200 wells that go dry, we were looking at about a $2 million budget. It was pretty easy for the Board of Supervisors to look at, okay, do we pay 25% of $2 million, or do we contract with someone who gets 100% reimbursement? So we contracted with out of Tulare, who is a very large housing. They typically do a lot of housing work. And between February and March, we had several meetings with them. One of the things that we really wanted to occur here, that we saw a problem with in some of the other areas that were running the program, is we wanted local contractors to do the work. We didn't want them bringing somebody in and being on their time schedule. We wanted them using our local contractors. So we got together with the well and pump contractors and got them signed up with Southwell. And in the second week of April, we started delivering water to homes that were out of water. There are counties out there that are trying to get the program together that started about the same time as we started and still don't have any water actually being delivered. So, boy, that's really hard to see, isn't it? Basically, this talks about how it works. If your well's gone dry, and all you need to do is call our office. Give us a call, tell us that your well's dry and you want to participate in the program. We'll send a staff member from my office out to the property, and we'll look at your well. First of all, we'll make sure that you have a well. or a spring, source. And that you're having a problem with your well. We'll check the depth. And we've got a couple of devices that we use to do that. So one of them is just a cable. It's a cable drop tool that we drop it down in this only has about 200 feet of cable on it. So if it's a shallow well, this is great. We'll run it down to the bottom or down till if it hits water. And if it finds water, the light comes on and the beep comes on, and we can measure it exactly where that water level is. The cable's got measurements on the side of the cable, so we can tell exactly what the water level is. And we've had several cases where we'll find that the well's got water in it, and we'll be able to help. Let people know. Jim?
I was one of those people. I had to call out and get the tank filled up, and Mr. Syke, I think his last name is, Brian Hodge from his staff came out. He was extremely helpful, courteous, kind, went out, looked through the whole system, and he measured, and we found water, but he was also looking to try to help us out and troubleshoot a little bit. So it's an excellent program. Don't worry about it. They're very kind and considerate and knowledgeable too. So if you have an issue, call right away. It was very prompt, courteous, and everything. So take advantage of it if you happen to run out of water.
And one of the things that we've had people that well, I really need water, but I don't want anybody coming out here looking at what I've got. So the way we're looking at the program is if we're coming out there to help you, we're not in enforcement mode. We're not coming out there to try and see, that building that you put over there and find out if you got a permit to put that building up or whatnot. We're there solely to look at your well source, and I've had, a couple of times when my inspectors come back and say, yeah, well, I saw this, and I said, yeah, well, oh well. It's we're not there to try and find problems. Anyway, so we come out and we look at the well. I also have another type of device that says sound. It sends sound waves down the well for the deeper wells that we can test and see the well. If we have a well log, we'll bring that with us so we can see, okay, how deep is the well. The pump is usually just 10 to 20 feet above the bottom of the well, so say your well is 200 feet deep according to the log, and I come out there and I sound your well, and you got water sitting in your well at 190 feet. Well, you've got some water in your well, but you probably have a pump sitting 10 feet off the bottom of that well, so you basically have a dry well. And same situation, I come out there, the well says your well is 200 feet deep, says the standing level of the water was 30 feet whenever it was drilled. We turn on the well, the pump doesn't, no water comes out, but we sound the well and there's water sitting at 30 feet. Guess what, you got a pump problem, you don't have a well problem. And we've had cases where we found pump problems, we found wiring problems. We found one recently that they got a little bit of water, but the pump just ran. They had a hole in the pipe, and the electricity bill. And one of the ways you can tell if you might have a hole in the pipe is if your electricity bill is just gone crazy, and your pump's running all the time. You might want to check your well and see if there's trying to check for a hole in the pipe. We've had cases where it was just a fuse. All that was wrong was that there was a broken fuse in the system. But it was an elderly lady whose husband always took care of the property. She didn't know what was going on, and she just knew that she no longer had water. So we were able to help diagnose that too. Once we determine that it is in fact a water problem, a well problem, we make a referral to Self-Help Enterprises. They bring, if you have a storage tank, who in here does not have a storage tank on your well? The best thing you can do to prevent drought-related problems for yourself is to get a storage tank. It gives you a lot of surge capacity. If you need water hauled to you, if you run out of water, even if it's just a pump problem, and it's going to take a week to get a pump replaced, you've got water, you can get water hauled to that tank. So what self-help will do is they'll come out and look at if you have water, if you have a tank, we'll immediately order water. They'll immediately order water and have your tank filled for you. If you don't have a tank, they'll come out and do an assessment, see where on the property it would be conducive to placing the tank. This is a temporary tank that they're going to put on the property, and the pressure pump, and how they can hook it up to your system and get you water. And they're usually out within 2 to 3 days to do that assessment. Contract with one of the local contractors. They'll look at what you need, how close is there electricity to where you're going to put the tank, how much work's required to be able to put a tank in, and then they'll sign up a contractor, and usually within a week after they contact the contractor, that person has water flowing again. And then what they'll have you do is that they want you to sign a contract for 1 year that you're leasing, no cost to you. That just makes sure that everybody understands who owns the tank. The tank is not yours to do. You're not getting a free tank out of the government. Although we're now starting to wonder what are we going to do with all these tanks when the program's done, and coming up with some creative thoughts on that we may want to donate those to the local fire safe council to just leave at your house, the people at this house at the program, because there are other reasons for having water storage besides the drinking water use. So, as of yesterday, we have 130 homes that are on the program, whose well or spring have gone dry. We're delivering just under 170,000 gallons a week. Wow. It's pretty amazing when you look at the numbers. Half of those, a little less than half, require tanks to be delivered to the property. And I kind of have a little breakdown down here of what supervisorial districts. The major population of Mariposa is within districts 3, 4, and 5, and that are on private wells, and it's not surprising that that's where the majority of the wells are.
Where are the water suppliers? Where do they get the water from?
They've got various sources. They've got, and the sources are anything from another public water source, supply source like MPD or Oakhurst Community Water, and then they have some that are a private commercial well that the state oversees all of that. Our office doesn't oversee the water. VZAC Liquid Transport is the major supplier in Mariposa, and he has a source in New Jack that he uses.
Is there a rationing factor? I mean, if you delivered water, however many hundreds of gallons, how long is that expected to last per person?
And that's part of the referral process. We find out how many people are in the house, and the allotment is 50 gallons per person per day. Okay. So if you use more than that, and that's the number that the state's thrown out, that is the average amount of water somebody needs for drinking, cooking, and sanitation purposes. That doesn't include any watering. Although if you're on this program, you should have a graywater system to keep your plants and stuff alive.
The other reason, because I see there it says average number of occupants for average gallons per home. 13, is that a monthly average gallon?
That's a week.
A
This
week?
is weekly. This is
So
weekly.
that would be like 300 gallons per person a week?
300 gallons.
We can figure that out.
Okay, never mind.
It's 350, I think, actually.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Okay,
And then
yeah.
shortly, we got into this program in the summertime, and beforehand, they're going, oh, I'm conserving, I'm not using it outside, what's going on? And we had failed to factor in that evaporative coolers. And depending on the type of evaporative cooler that you have, and whether it leaks or not, I've seen plenty of them that leak, you can be using up to 60 gallons a day of water in the evaporation process. Some of the newer ones also every few hours dump all the water out to get the mineral buildup. So during the summer month, we added an allotment of an additional 60 gallons per person, per household.
So that's where you get the 167,000, that seems like out of the ballpark. I mean, too much. I mean, nobody's going to use that much. You have to water.
That's 100.
That's for 130.
That's 130 households.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
You have another question right here.
Does that take into account animals?
No. It doesn't. And we've had cases where, and unfortunately, we've talked to the state about that, and they will not reimburse at a rate for animals. So you need to, if you have animals, then you need to augment to them. If you have absolutely no water coming out of your well, you can split the cost. And we'll continue to haul water for your needs, and say you need to pay additional, say according to our calculations, your 2,500 gallon tank needs to be filled up every 3 weeks, but based on the household. But it's every 2 weeks that you need it. On those off weeks, that you just pay for the thing. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to, even though outside on the notice we say water well workshop, the second half of this program is going to be rainwater catchment type systems and things of that. So those of you that want to do landscaping or have animals, please stay, please. Yes, I know I don't have it either, but please, or little ponds, please stay, because you'll get lots of good ideas on how to handle that water situation.
Yeah, unfortunately it's dark here. What this slide is just showing is there's a well right here, and in those cases where the well's still producing a little bit of water, it's not producing enough water to be able to keep the house going, we'll still qualify them for the program. And thinking about, okay, if you need 50 gallons per person per day, and your well's only producing 20 gallons, or maybe it's only producing 50 gallons total in a day, that's still 50 gallons that you can use. So we'll have them connect up if possible, if they get close enough to the well, and augment with your well going into the system. And a lot of times, that's all you need is your own well going into your system. The well may not produce enough water to get you through at because it's a low static level, and you'll pump the water out and it's not producing fast enough. But over a 24-hour period, a very low producing well can in fact fill the tank in a couple of days. 1 gallon a minute gives you 1,440 gallons in a day. So just because it's a real low producing well doesn't always mean that you're going to be constantly out of water. This one is another picture that you can't see, but basically this connection is not connected to it's just a tank coming out, going to a pressure system, going straight in, and they just tie right into an outside hose bib outside of the house to back pressure into the system. And that's pretty much the program. Any other questions? I did before the other questions, I did want to say one thing about with our CDAA program and greywater use, and I think Regina's going to talk about greywater systems. I encourage you to stick around and hear Regina's talk on greywater systems. With the drought, it's more important than ever to utilize greywater for its beneficial uses. And while there hasn't been a study that came out about this yet, I was talking with, and we'll see what happens when the report comes out. Everybody heard about the Valley Fire up in Lake County recently, and so many homes that were lost. There were whole blocks of an entire street block where 3 or 4 houses survived, but everything else was gone. And I was talking to a firefighter that was working on that, and he said one of the interesting things that he noticed is that all of the homes that survived had lawns and ornamental plants around the house. The houses that had succumbed to the drought and had allowed their lawns to die off as, you know, and I'm not advocating that you go out and plant a lawn, but find a way to utilize that gray water rather than just run it out to the septic system. And Regina can talk to you about that, because that puts a moisture base around your home that it looks like may have saved some of those homes in that. So yeah, question?
Actually, a comment on the dry well program. Unfortunately, we had to go off the dry well program, and I just wanted to say your office is phenomenal. Those folks are out there virtually instantaneously. They got us set up very quickly, and then in a very short amount of time, the BZAC truck was pulling up and dumping water into the tank. It was painless and very, very fast. So I appreciate your office and what they're doing.